live, and welcome to the weekly live stream from the OG channel, or Ask Dave. And it is today man, time's going by fast. It's the 3rd of March, 6:45 p.m. local time, which is the 4th of March, 01:45 GMT or UTC. It is 49 degrees here, so it has been pretty warm today. There was something in the forecast about potential snow. It did get a little bit overcast. I got an eye on the weather because I'm supposed to fly again tomorrow morning. I did fly yesterday afternoon for the first time in ages. My instructor, Dennis Dugan, this is his card, a little paper airplane, it's kind of cute. He was in Costa Rica, and that's when we had all the snow and everything stuff here. I was going to fly with the previous instructor, but we got out doing the run-up and found a problem with the ignition, which turned out to be a problem during the annual. The mechanic had left one of the plug caps unplugged. So anyway, got that all fixed, but by then she had to go. So we flew yesterday for quite a while, and we're practicing landings. We're doing landings now, trying to get them right. I can about 30% of the time do a beautiful landing, and 70% of the time do a landing I can walk away from. So that's kind of where it is. I've got quite a few people checked in already. Optical Man Jeff, KE0OG is here. He says he's in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where it is 30 degrees. It's 48 here. That was countered by Jamaica Dog, who is in Ocean Isle Beach, North Carolina, and it was 80 today. William Myers, KE0OG, says hello to everyone. And let's see. K9GCP says hello, Augies from Northern Illinois. It's 29 here and no precipitation. And let's see, Greg Culbreth, N7OVR, 39 now, but was 63 this afternoon in Monticello. That's not very far from us, a little bit to the west, just over the Utah border. Hello from Land Lakes, Florida, K4NCO. The Slide T-Bone says hello, Dave and all. Reed AB8AS says good evening. And Vrod Boy says good evening, K6SDW. Paul Griffith says hi from KE5WMA. James, KF5EOB, hello. Mike Oswald, hello from AA7MO in Kirkland, Washington, where I understand it has been raining. And getting quite a bit of rain, as a matter of fact. John Mills says hi, all from John EA8, G4STA in the Canary Islands. I guess that volcano has finally stopped erupting. And I hope they'll get everything cleaned up from that. That made a mess over there. Jesse says, good evening, Dave. Davis, K3DHJ, says, good evening from Delaware. Joe Mercado says, KG7JM, says, best wishes. Claudio Bio, hello from Peru. Oscar Alpha 4, Bravo Mike Golf. Charles Holtzschuh says hello. Stuart Perry says, good evening, Dave. Don Z, hello from the north of the Twin Cities, where it's 22 degrees. We're supposed to get snow tomorrow, so we'll see. But I may not be flying. Greetings from Union, Missouri, USA, from Ron, N0YCX. 800, Bootstrap says hi, Dave. Kenny Baker says hello, Dave, from Texas, AI5FR 73. Sissy Remus says hello from KM4JJW in Kentucky. Paul is in VK land, VK4 DPC in Australia, where it's probably the middle of the day. And I am aviating again. He says, good for you. Dave Ross, hello from Summerfield, North Carolina. I guess it's probably warm there too. Chuck Schreiber, hello, Dave and everyone from South Texas. currently 66 there. Peter O says, good evening from from New Hampshire. 21 degrees Fahrenheit there. This seems to be a dividing line. Jason Hefcan 4 ZUN. Hiya Dave, been watching your extra videos, taking the exam into March. Good for you. Good for you for pushing on. I hope my videos are helpful, and I wish you the best of luck in your testing. KJ7IRE says, pardon me, but I'm not seeing very well today. There we go. 85 today in Apache Junction, Arizona, which is down in the Phoenix area. 63 at Vance Air Force Base, Oklahoma. Dave, now that I've watched enough of your YouTube vids, I've got your voice in my head as I study the technician manual. Great. We're going to be updating those technician videos over the next few months because the new guide for technician video from the ARRL will come out in probably June, early June. And of course, the new questions are already available, and the new test starts on July 1st. Now, usually the questions don't change much, but they do change. Sometimes they cover some new topics and drop some old ones. So we'll see how that goes. There is a guy now actively working on the manual, and I will be working with him just to kind of correlate, make sure that the videos are updated along with the manual. Let's see, Tim Backus, hello from Tucson, Arizona. I've actually been there. I was there on a day when it was 110 in the shade, and I was at the airport and had to fly out, and they had to empty the plane of half its passengers in order for that thing to get off the ground, because high temperatures like that just caused the effective elevation of the airport to go up quite a bit. W1LEX says, hello from the Green Mountain State. I understand you were in my neck of the woods this past weekend. I was by Zoom. I gave it was really more an Ask Dave session at the Vermont, state convention. And that was kind of fun. Yeah. I've had quite a few people ask me to do presentations. I've been putting people off of late. I just have not re-hit my stride on those. And so I've got a folder over here of speaking invitations, and hopefully in another couple months I'll be able to reply and say yes to those. San Diego, it'd be nice and warm down there. Shelby, North Carolina, Randy is there. Jesse says, I was at your talk at HamCon. It was cool to learn more about you and how you got started at this Ask Dave. And hi from Gray, Tennessee, AB4P. And howdy Dave from K2DJS in North Jersey. North New Jersey. Old Jersey's in England somewhere. And I'm not sure. It may be one of the Channel Islands. Somebody will correct me on that. I'm sure. Well, I did a video that, let's see, in the April, it's the March QST that just came out. April should be coming out in a week or so. I did I'm not sure it's April or May, did something for Ask Dave that involved measuring the self-oscillation frequency of a coil to show a little bit about how traps were made with just wire, without the capacitor. The capacitance is supplied by the capacitance between the windings. So I thought what I would do is make a coil and make a 40 meter 20 meter trapped dipole. And so I sent off to CMS Magnetics and got this magnet wire. And it's a spool. It's about 300 feet or so. It's a full pound of copper, so it was not cheap. But this is magnet wire. It's just ordinary wire. It's pretty strong. It has been coated with a varnish to give it the insulation between the turns. And this is supposedly high temperature wire that can withstand up to 180 degrees centigrade, which is quite a bit. Comes from CMS Magnetics in Garland, Texas. And it says the rated current 2 amps. And so we're going to build a trap. See what we need to do by trial and error to build a trap that will work. What it needs to do is resonate on 20 meters. And so we're going to keep adding windings until we get to the point where the coil will self-resonate, meaning that the stray capacitance in between them is what causes the trap to resonate. The trap that is at resonance, if it's a parallel circuit that looks like this, what you want is your line. Then the trap goes in here, and there's a coil, and there is capacitance. And it's a coil. I'm not the best at drawing. The capacitance here and the coil will cause this to resonate at a certain frequency. Now what we want to do is do this with just a coil. So we're going to put a coil, and remember, every time a wire comes next to another wire, there's a little bit of capacitance between each of the wires, okay? And that capacitance, it's called stray capacitance, and you can take the effective capacitance here and the effective inductance of the coil and determine the resonant frequency there. And that's what we're going to do and create a 20 meter trap. And we're going to do that by using the dip oscillator attachments that go with my little MFJ antenna analyzer that will show the resonance of a tuned circuit. And it's actually quite simple. So like I said, that video is coming out with the April QST. I don't know if it's actually already posted. It might be. Sometimes they get posted early. So I'm going to do a more complex one. We're going to use just a piece of plastic pipe as a coil form, and we'll just keep running it till we get the stray capacitance to match what we need, about 14.125 megahertz. We'll put that in there, and then by trial and error see how long we need to make the wires. Here's the thing: when an antenna is fed below its resonant frequency, it looks inductive. When it's fed above its resonant frequency, it looks capacitive. So if the trap is resonant on 20 meters, excuse me, at 40 meters, it looks quite inductive. And it acts as a loading coil for the 40 meter band, allowing the 40 section to be shorter. However, by adding that inductance in there, it raises the Q of the 40 meter resonant section, and so it won't cover the whole band. So we'll go over all of that in the antenna. Okay, let's see, we've got Gray from Tennessee, AB4P. North Jersey, yes, Lakewood, Colorado. Never miss a Thursday with you. And Roz, thank you. John Mills, Jersey is one of the UK Channel Islands. Okay, used to be a tax haven, but not anymore. So that means all the rich people left. Dave, would you briefly explain what you mean by a trap? Certainly. Let's just use this right here, and we're going to draw two coils. We're going to dipole, okay, and here we're going to put a tuned circuit, which is a coil with some capacitance, and then more of the antenna. So we're going to put this, okay, like that. This is a tuned circuit, and I forget it. It's 1 over 2 pi square root of LC is the frequency of resonance, where this is the inductance, this is the capacitance. That's 2 pi, and this will actually be in hertz. So if you use, it's got to be capacitance in farads and inductance in henries. Then it will give you the frequency resonance in hertz. Now here's the thing. When you feed energy into this trap, it causes the trap to resonate. And if you look at here's 0 hertz. If you look at the resonant frequency, it doesn't resonate, and then it does, and then it doesn't anymore. So down here, below the frequency of resonance, it does not pass any current, only at the frequency of resonance. Now this looks like a high impedance, and high impedance, it's C. Down here it looks inductive, and up here it looks capacitive. So what happens is, when you do this, hit this at 20 meters, this thing acts like a very high impedance to the frequency of resonance. Okay? So if this is, for example, 14 megahertz, which is the 20 meter band, okay, the RF only gets as far as the trap. It makes the trap resonate. Now, if you use a different frequency, like a lower frequency, which is what we're going to look at, a lower frequency will see this whole thing, but it will look like it's center loaded with an inductance. Okay. Now, an inductance put into series with a resonator, an antenna, will cause the antenna will be shorter. It'll resonate at a lower frequency. So you can shorten this to get it back up to 40 meters. So basically a trap stops certain frequencies from going beyond this. So 14 megahertz, we only see this part of the antenna. At 40 megahertz, or 40 meters, 7 megahertz, we see the whole antenna, because this just acts like a little extra inductance in the line. I hope that helps. Okay. Let's see. Would you briefly? I hope that Jesse, tell me if that explained what you wanted. Okay, Glenn. Let's see. John said AA7MO. And others from Kirkland, Washington. Glenn Martin, hello from Far West Missouri area. And Glenn, I don't know with a name like yours if you're related to the Glenn Martin, who was the aircraft pioneer back in the 20s and 30s. Martin Aircraft had quite something going. The name lives on in Lockheed Martin. The old Martin Aircraft Company and Lockheed merged, and it's now called Lockheed Martin. I'm just wondering if you're related. Here's Charles Woods, KD8EFQ from Akron, Ohio. Appreciates all the videos. And Richard Carey, why would you have two coils, one on each power wire going to a radio? Well, if it's the power wire going to a radio, I'm going to interpret what you're looking at. They are not coils, they're fuses. And let me show you why that is. If you have a fuse here, a radio, and here's the battery in the vehicle, your power cord is supposed to come all the way to these two, and there's a little fuse right on either lead. There's also a link from this to the chassis. If something happens to this link here in any way, the screw comes loose, it gets corroded, something like that, then the entire automobile, which is fed by positive and everything else is grounded to the chassis. This radio is grounded to the chassis, okay? And so this will seek to get back to the battery by going through this lead right here. That's a very rare error, I understand, very rare, but that would immediately pop that fuse. Otherwise, that fuse, that wire will become red hot and could burn. Okay, could cause a fire. So that's why we do that. I hope that answers the question. Let's see. WW4LLL is there in Spring Lake, Tennessee. Yes. Good evening, all from KD8EFQ. Charles Woods, Dmitry Hetman. Oh, we've got somebody from the Ukraine. There are things that are going on in the Ukraine right now. I think the Russians had no idea the resistance they would get from Ukraine. They thought they'd just roll in and take over. Well, President Zelensky had other ideas. So, God bless you and good luck to you. Boyd, KE0OG, good evening from Hillsborough, North Carolina. You can tune an antenna, but you can't tune a fish. Believe me, geneticists have been trying to tune fish for decades. Since fish is a big part of most everybody's diet, biologists are trying to genetically alter the fish so that they'll grow better under farming conditions. So they are, in a sense, tuning tuna. But tunas are pretty big for that. Tunas are huge fish, about the size of a dolphin. And they're being hunted to extinction, unfortunately. So there are a lot of people who are trying to fix that. That's not good there, yeah. Standard or a guitar, I hear. There's a clock, tick-tock, in the background. And James McDonough's watching the show. Very good. Treyfert, how is the mouth, Dave? Well, I still have a missing tooth. I got a call yesterday from the dentist because I was supposed to go in yesterday morning and get my new teeth. But they called Tuesday afternoon and said that the people they get the partials from are running into supply chain problems, and so they won't have it for another week. You know, a lot of people don't talk about this in quite these terms, but supply chain problems is another way of saying we're living in an era of shortages. And this came about because we made the mistake, the world made the mistake, of thinking that there was such a thing as a non-essential business. There is no such thing as a non-essential business. And these so-called non-essential businesses had to shut down, some of them for months. And then everybody's saying, well, why can't we find this? Why can't we find that? Because those businesses were shut down, that's why. So it's very, very hard, getting very hard to get parts for everything. I use the CPAP machine at night. I cannot find distilled water. There doesn't seem to be any in Montrose. There's a Target, there's a Walmart, there's a City Market, there's a Safeway, two City Markets. Can't find distilled water anywhere, so I'm going without right now. And that's kind of what's, life is like. So when I was at City Market the other day to pick up some milk, I swung through the cereal aisle just to kind of see what they had left, and I picked something out I thought I'd like, because they don't have the ones I normally get, so you get what you can. Get what you can when you can. A lot of people I know who are getting into ham radio are reporting 2 to 3 month delays getting major equipment like HF rigs and so on. So we're going to see this play out. It's going to take a long time for the market to sort itself out. And with the war in Ukraine, Ukraine makes a lot of stuff that we in the West use. I was just looking on the Airline Owners and Pilots Association weekly video. There's an aircraft manufacturer over there that sells in the West, and of course their factory's been shut down. And there are a lot of things manufactured in, I say the Ukraine, I know that's out of date, in Ukraine, the Ukraine. So we'll see this, we'll see more of this. I mean, Bulgaria, for example, is in Eastern Europe, makes a huge amount of the tubes that are still used in amplifiers. So it's crazy, absolutely crazy. Okay, let's see. Hello from the Faroe Islands again. Oscar Yankee 1 Romeo from Reggie Love. JC said, yes, that was very helpful. Good, thank you. Kyle Baker, way home north on the New Hampshire-Canadian border. That is north, yes. Wow. Trayford, hello from Warner Robins in Georgia. I think there's an Air Force base there, at least there used to be. Todd got his SignalLink computer and Kenwood TS590SG working together. Finally had his first PSK CUSA. Well, congratulations, Todd. Now that you have that together, you're also good to go on FT8 and just about any other digital mode that you want. Roll Glorioso says hello from the Philippines, from Delta Victor 1 Victor Hotel Kilo. Hello. Mike Oswald is saying hello to John Sambrook. And K3XQ saying good evening from Harrisburg. Kang, good evening from Tampa. KK0OG. Reggie Love, have you tried 5/8 wave antennas and how do you feed them for HF? I have a 5/8 for 2 meters. They used to be all the rage about 30 years ago. And it's a mag mount, goes on top of my car, and it's all bent up at the top from every time it's gotten jammed in the garage door opener. But it works, and what it does is the way it gets gain, I'll show you here, is that you put up a quarter wave antenna like this on a car. Okay, and it's going to have a radiation pattern like this all the way around, a big donut. Okay, well, if you do the 5/8, which is taller, it's going to do this to the pattern. It's going to squish the pattern down. Okay, so you get further distance. Okay, further distance because the pattern is not as vertical. So that's, and by the way, that is, did that focus? That did not focus. Oh, come on, focus. Let's go in there and force it to focus. Properties. Configure video. Camera control. Focus. There. Okay, we'll make it manual. Okay, so what's happening? The orange line, I apologize for that. The orange line is for the quarter wave. Okay. Now a 5/8 wave is substantially taller. It's greater than a half wave plus an eighth wave up here, so it's taller. And what that does is it squashes down the signal. Okay, so it'll go further because there isn't as much distance this way. There's just this distance. So it'll go further. Now you can do the same thing with the 5/8 wave. I apologize for the focus there. You can do the same thing with the 5/8 wave for a HF antenna. I've never really looked into it. It does have to be loaded, okay, to work. It's not quite like an end-fed dipole. That would be a 4/8 wave, but it's a 5/8 wave. It's a little bit longer. So I'll have to look into that and see what can be done with that, because what that will do to your HF antenna is actually drop the pattern down, which will give you better HF. Okay, so it would be practical on longer frequencies. Now my step IR, big IR has the capability to go 3/4 wave, but only on like 17, 15, 12, and 10, because it tops out at 33 feet. So, okay. Ray, just curious if you did any work on building an aviation headset. You know, somebody gave me a link in a previous episode, and I put it down on the chalkboard and then erased it. And I went, oh my God, I just erased what I need. So if somebody has that, could send that to me again. I'd be very interested in that. Now, I was just looking at this radio right here, which I bought some time ago. We ran into radio problems on yesterday's flight. I have this radio. This is by ICOM. It is a it's VHF because it's an aircraft band radio. So this can actually be used like in a glider or something like that, or you can use it on the ground to talk to an aircraft that's up above you on the aircraft band. It's 6 watts PEP, which means about 4 watts real, AM radio, and it has available in here, if you listen to the VORs, VHF Omni Range, it'll actually show the circle and stuff like that on here. So you can use this for navigation using the old-fashioned way. The sport license does not require learning the old VHF Omni Range type of stuff, but I want to learn it anyway. Sport pilots use GPS for direction or compasses, and with issues they've been having with GPS, the Army keeps wanting to do exercises that include GPS jamming. And it's caused some issues with real aircraft, carrying real people. So I want to have that as an extra. Hey Dave, just curious, so I haven't got there. Gary Murdoch, greetings Dave. The trap dipole you described, is the length up to traps the correct length for 20 meters? Yes. Okay, before it goes off in the 40 meter band. Now, the length for the 40 meter band is much shortened because the trap itself acts as an inductor. In other words, a coil in line with that 40 meter antenna, which when you add inductance, it shortens the antenna and increases the Q. No free lunch in antennas. So if you're going to shorten the antenna with loading, you're going to narrow the frequency band. Okay, I got my extra few years ago with help on videos. And he's saying, thank you very much, KE0OG. Greg Colbreth, glad to see the ARRL newsletter article on the Forest Service fee. Yes, comment period extended. Do make a polite comment. Understand that the people at the Forest Service are required to read every comment. They can't just ignore them. They have to read them. And they have to affirm in some manner that they have taken everybody's concerns into account. So express your concern, thank them for what they're doing, and don't vent on them. If you vent on somebody like a hotel clerk because they won't give you what you want, what does that do to the hotel clerk? It makes the hotel clerk very incentivized to not give you what you want. Okay, and the same works with government people. These are just ordinary folk like you and me who go to work and try to do the best they can for the country. And I've used to work with a lot of Forest Service folks when I was with IBM. And they're very motivated in what they do. And they certainly don't like to be dumped on. Okay? So make your comments, talk about the positive facets about this, talk about the losses if they were to go ahead, and keep it very calm, very reasonable, and say something good about the Forest Service, while you're at it. So makes it a lot more likely that your comment will really be considered beyond just being read. Okay, Wall Street Journal had an article today about high-tech industry in Ukraine. Yeah, there's a lot there. And the Russians are being really stupid by taking it away. Was on the fence on buying a new radio, ran over to HRA in Orlando Tuesday and picked up a 991 because I figured more might happen to the supply chain. Yeah. This is one of those things. Know in advance what you want, because if you see it, grab it. So, and then you've got to be flexible, like I was when I walked through the cereal aisle. I went, that's not there. Oh, that's not there. Oh, they're all sold out of that. Oh, they don't have that. They don't have that. I'll buy this. That's going to become a way of life here, and it's going to take 2 to 5 years for it to sort itself out. And that's assuming we don't have more Ukraines. Okay? Ukraine was toying with the idea of joining NATO. If they had been a member of NATO, which Poland is, if they had been a member of NATO, an invasion of the Ukraine would have been considered an invasion of all of Europe. But Ukraine is not a NATO member, so all we can do is sit there and watch very anxiously. Because that high-tech industry is, can't see the drawing at all. Yeah, blurry. Sorry about that. What's the downside of running a coax up along a tree trunk to an inverted V? None. The coax, assuming you don't have a bunch of signal coming down the outer shield. Everything stays inside the coax. You can coil up coaxes, you can bunch them together, you can do all that stuff with coax. And it doesn't matter. And using a tree as the center point for an inverted V is, I think, fairly common, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. Now, if that were ladder line, different story. You need to get, and you can get these, little offsets that offset about 6 to 8 inches. They'll screw into the tree and you thread your wire through it, and that way, the problem is with, well, here, I'll just show this again here. And I put a fixed focus on this, so hopefully it'll stay focused. If you have a center conductor and an outer conductor, like a coax, your electric field is all inside, assuming this is 100% coverage. Okay, RG58 is not 100% coverage. Now, if you have two wires and they're spaced a distance apart, the peak of the energy, the pointing vector, is down the middle, but the energy is out like this in less and less and less the further you get out. Most of it is in here, but it's still kind of around it. So that means that you can't just put this up against a piece of metal because it's going to cut into the electric field. Okay, the worst thing to do would be to put it against a piece of metal like that, because then you've got all these things hitting that, and you'll do real problems with your ability to conduct RF. So this is why we use Coax, because it can go through other things and so on. Okay, hopefully that's better now. And I'm back on here. Okay, Optical Man Jeff is going to do a tech training class on Saturday the 5th. They want us to use the outline from the RRL in PowerPoint. It seems a little dry. Any suggestions for the first two chapters? I have seen those charts. I've even used them. And I don't think you're doing much other than teaching the test, frankly. You can make it more interesting by doing demonstrations. Pick something like demonstrating two hams talking over the radio, or a packet demo, or have a APRS tracker and show how it shows up on the internet. Things like that might be of interest. Okay. So that's what I would suggest for that. To try and use the videos like I do takes way more time than you can put into a single day class. But you're welcome to use my videos all you want. Miami Dolphin colors, yes. Here you go, April. Okay, now I'm going to write this down on a piece of paper here. Okay, April 2010, QST, Hints and Kinks, KE0OG, KE0OG, Hints and Kinks. They don't use the word kinks anymore because it's picked up a bad connotation. Okay. Aviation headset adapter, yeah. Okay, thought I saw a video where a guy made an 80-meter dipole and ran it along his fence. Would that work in any way? If it's a wooden fence, yes, it would. It's too low to be anything more than an NVIS antenna, and even for that, it's kind of too low. You're not going to get any sideways radiation out of that at all. You can't do that with a metal fence. You can only do that with like a wooden fence. Gary Murdoch sends $20 to Channel Funds and says, thank you, Dave, and thank you. DJ Jackson says the next Ukraine is Taiwan. I wouldn't be surprised with that. That issue of Taiwan has been pushed off for 50 years. I can remember it as a teenager as being an issue. And my first wife was from there. She was actually from the mainland, but she moved with her parents to Taiwan when the communists pushed them out. John Sambrook, good advice to not unload on people. How to Win Friends and Influence People was by Andrew Carnegie, and was one of the most influential books I read as a teenager. And works. Everything in there works. It's just common sense, and it works. Vietnam and Korea were not part of NATO, and the U.S. went to those two countries. Why? Well, NATO only covers Europe. That's why. Korea was fairly easy because it was the communist Chinese who came in. And we were very anti-communist at the time. Remember, we were allied with Chiang Kai-shek, who was in Taiwan. Okay. Formosa, as it was called at the time, Formosa. And so they were, you got the same enemy, the communist Reds coming into Korea, and we went in there to help out. Now, you've got a classic example here. South Korea and North Korea were then very much like North Korea is today. Very backward, very poor, terrible places to grow up. And now under democracy, they have thrived in South Korea. Okay. Vietnam is just plain questionable all around. Okay, so anyway, NATO is kind of where we're focused right at the moment, but don't put it past someone in some other part of the world to sneak a little invasion in here and there. Okay. Optical Man Jeff KE0OG adds $15 to channel funds and says, thanks, Dave, for everything. Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate that. Has there been any changes in the grandfathering of Tech Plus license to general class? No. Not unless you are had a tech license that's so old that you had to take this general test to get it. And that's getting to be many, many decades ago. So just an ordinary Tech Plus license does not grandfather into general. Only if the test you took was the general test. And that was how you got into technician back in ancient times. You had to take the general test, and then you had to pass 5 words a minute to get your technician license. And that was for people interested only in VHF. Okay, and Paul says he has to take off. He's net control coming up here. Claudio Bio says, can I use relays remotely controlled to select the proper tap in my balcony bottom loaded antenna? Yes, you can, but I would get it from the manufacturer. Otherwise, you're in for a great deal of experimentation. I found that everyone goes ballistic, but very few people make a point saying that was exceptional service. So I make a point to thank them. It's an easy way to make somebody's day. Yes, life and death. Thank you for that. And I'm glad you said that. I have heard people say, why do you say something nice to somebody? It's not going to get you anything. Come on, people. We're people. We're all on this little Earthship together. Okay? Let's make each other's life as kind as we can. I agree with life and death. I try to go out of my way to say thank you to people that I come in contact with. Tony KJ7SHW says, Dave, I've been watching your videos for years. First time catching you live. Hello. Donald Bogard, how do you get an RDT file to download a code plug? I don't understand. I don't understand either. Is RDT the type of code plug? Google will download pretty much anything. You don't need any special way of doing it. A code plug is, for a DMR radio, the sum total of the programming is called the code plug. And every time that you read the radio out, you're reading out the entire code plug. This is important to understand. And when you load into the radio, you're loading the entire code plug. So you cannot load some frequencies and then come back in later and load others and come back in later and load others, sort of a la carte. You can't do that with a DMR radio. You read the whole code plug and you upload the whole code plug. And that is true with most radios. I had somebody very perplexed said that he put some frequencies in that he wanted to have, and when he changed some others, it wiped out the ones he had before. Well, yeah, you make your changes, you keep a copy of the code plug on your computer, okay? Then you will make your changes to that and then upload the whole thing to the radio, okay? And keep that copy current that's on there, because when you're in the computer, you can switch and modulate anything that you want. Okay, Jason Heff said he did an antenna like that along his vinyl fence. Jason, curious how that has worked for you. Roel says, going to get my hex beam very soon with weather support. Learned on snow issue of your hex beam. Yes, even though we don't have snow here in the Philippines, who knows what will happen because of climate change. I suspect it'll get even warmer in the Philippines. Although I will tell you, when I was in Manila one day, it got down to 68 degrees one night. This was in February, something like that. It was an exceptionally cold day in the Philippines. And people were actually burning down their houses because they started little fires to keep warm, and it ended up getting out of control. If you go up around Baguio, places like that, it will snow in the winter. So, yeah, you can get that even in the Philippines. So, I remember that 68 degree thing because I was cold. And I grew up in Southern California, but nobody has jackets over there, or sweaters, or anything like unto it. In our church here, we've got a new missionary. Every ward has a couple missionaries assigned to it. And this young man is from Florida. He came up here and he is freezing, absolutely freezing. Okay, Dale Carnegie, not Andrew. Okay, thank you, Dale Carnegie. Appreciate that, thank you. Big semiconductor industry in Taiwan, yes, big. Now it's interesting to know that Foxconn, which does a lot of stuff for Apple, has Chinese factories. There's been a lot of complaints about them hiring children and all this kind of stuff. It's actually a Taiwanese company, so there's a lot of business ties between the two companies. If the politicians were smart, they would leave well enough alone. But they had a very good thing going in Hong Kong, too, which has a lot of foreign stuff bringing in a lot of money and so on. And they went in there and shut all that down. So they're not acting rationally. So thank you. North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Yes, key being North Atlantic. Well, Europe. Was there not a CETO organization for the East? Yes, there was. World War III. Well, after World War I, remember World War I was called the War to End All Wars. Ha! The Woodrow Wilson, who was the American president, who was thought of in those days as the great sage, who in essence laid out the terms of the Versailles Treaty, practically just wrote into its pages, in 20 years you're going to have another war with Germany, and they did. And a lot of the reason for Hitler's rise to power was because German people felt that they'd been pretty royally screwed by the Versailles Treaty. And they had been, actually. And there was a lot of talk about liberalizing some of the things, but it was by then things had gotten too far in. There are over 250 operational A-10 Warthogs. They're called that because they are ugly as sin. However, those who fly them... Yeah, I looked at that 40-mile column myself and thought, man, there was a time when the Germans were preparing to come through the Ardennes, actually right straight through the forest. These trees were not very big, And they just mowed them down and came straight through the forest, right around the Maginot Line, okay, which nobody thought they could do. For several days, maybe a week beforehand, was massive pandemonium as the Germans tried to organize themselves. A few warthog-style raids on that could have avoided a great deal of trouble, but that opportunity was missed. And I'm afraid it may have been missed this time too. So, anyway, Korea was a UN action. That was our excuse for going in. That was a UN police action. It was actually a war. It was never declared as a war. The last time the United States has declared war was World War II. Since then, there was the Gulf of Tonkin resolution in Congress, which gave the president the authority to perform limited actions in Vietnam. That was the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, and there was a similar Gulf War resolution from Congress, but we have not officially declared war since World War II, December, and it was December 8th, 1941. They attacked on the 7th, but that was a Sunday, and Congress was not in session. So, Michael Faison says, thank you so much for your videos. My dad did radio stuff when I was a kid. He's 50 now. Got a license for APRS some years ago. I'm now learning Morse code and building a QCX radio. Good for you. Those little QCX radios are cool. The hard thing is T1. That's the big transformer. It's got 4 separate windings on there. And it is real easy, and I can attest to that from personal experience. Real easy to get that in there wrong. Okay, Walter Schomer says, thank you. Sure enjoy all the great info. Jason NFED half-wave along my vinyl fence is very NVIS. Yes, only about 4 feet above the ground. Okay, very long at 133 feet. Just made a 40 through 10 meter NFED half-wave that I will have over my house. That will give you, I think, better performance. 68 cold. That's the point I was trying to make. In the Philippines, I spent 2 years there. It never got cold. Ever. There are 2 seasons there. Hot and hotter. They do have a rainy season where it can get very, very wet, and then they have a non-rainy season where it's less wet. But I was never cold in the Philippines, but like I said, that 68-degree overnight low in Manila made the headlines in the paper because it's just not something that ever happens there. So, yeah, and if you're if you're used to living, say, in Dominica, you get used to the warmth, and if it's not above 80, it's quite uncomfortable. So, let's see. Did you see where the AN-225, yes, the big airplane, the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry has vowed they will reconstruct that airplane because it actually was used. It's a huge transport airline, transport in not people but cargo. Okay, let's see, that's what I was saying. That's summer temp here, yeah. Did you see, well, yeah, that was destroyed. That's such a shame. We're at least 5 years out from spinning up new fabs in the U.S. The world is dependent on Taiwan. Taiwan is not the only manufacturer of chips by any means. In fact, the Taiwanese company that makes them is by no means the biggest fab in the world. There are other fabs. There are lots of fabs in the U.S., but you're right, it takes 5 years or more to spin up a fab. And then to change from one product to another takes, an awful lot of work to do that. Those things are very complex. It's come to the point where when they assemble a new processor chip, They actually do it in blocks, subsystems. And a lot of those subsystems are open source. Interestingly, some of those blocks for the semiconductors come from Russia. And there has been some concern that who knows what's in that code. The U.S. government has gone to IBM and sources like that. They want semiconductors that have been USA, 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 USA at every step. Of course, needless to say, they're kind of expensive. Mike Marr has submitted 888 yen to the channel funds. So we're up to 42.69 now. And DJ Jackson says, please don't forget to hit the like button. I appreciate it if you do that. John Sambrooks to Trayford, the geniuses in the Russian army are said to be shelling a nuclear plant in the Ukraine. One of the very first things that the Russians took was Chernobyl. The old plant of Chernobyl was in the Ukraine. Is in the Ukraine. In Ukraine. I'll get that right someday. And the Russians went for it, and I think the Ukrainians were probably saying, please let me show you the way. I mean, the thing's a radioactive hulk right now. But there are other nuclear power plants in that area there. North Slope, Alaska is really cold, minus 55 plus wind chill. I was working there and it's not a joke. Yes. Anything below, this is Roel saying anything below 20 degrees centigrade or 68 Fahrenheit is winter. Yes. The X5105 radio seems not to be available. What happened to it? Well, it's right here. Here's the X5105 right here. And this is powering on, and okay, 14270 was the last frequency I had it on. Okay, so how do you turn it off? Holding in the power button, it's not turning it off. I'll have to figure that one out later. The nice thing about this one is that it has a battery in it. The non-nice thing about it is that it's quite heavy. But it's perfectly good radio. I believe the model has just been superseded. Now, it used to be that MFJ got with Xiegu and offered to become the sole importer of Xiegu into the United States. And then Xiegu just turned right around and started selling their product direct and selling it through other distributors and so on. And I talked with somebody at MFJ and they were not happy about that. And they're no longer doing deals like that with Chinese companies. China does not understand the value of the brand. And you'll see this with radios made by Baofeng with Radioddity written on them and so on. You know, a brand is just a decoration on the package. Whereas we view brands to represent the company behind the brand. So General Electric, for example. You know, if you go to General Electric and buy a General Electric refrigerator, you're also buying the reputation of that company. And Ford, GM, we have a Chevy Silverado truck. I mean, that name, Chevy Silverado, means something. It's not just a pretty thing on top of it. By the way, LG, the company LG, I wish I could shut this thing up. Let's see. Holding in the power button is not doing anything. I'll have to pull out the instructions for it and figure it out. Where's the volume control? Oh well, I'll worry about it later. LG. The company used to have LG stands for Lucky Gold Star. And they have been importing under that brand for a long time. This Korean company. And Lucky Gold Star sounds weird to Americans, okay? Whereas the idea of luck to a East Asian means a lot more than it does in the United States. It's almost like a blessing from the gods. And I once had a heart-to-heart with a young Chinese programmer at a company that I was doing some work for. And, when I wished him Godspeed and good luck, he almost came to tears. It has a real meaning for some Lucky Gold Star was a brand. So they abbreviated it for Americans, just called it Gold Star, which still doesn't mean that much to Americans. So they finally went to just LG, and they've hit success with that. We had an LG refrigerator, however, and it had the newfangled linear compressor, which was quite quiet. However, after 3 years, we had to have it replaced. And then after about 4 more years, we had to have it replaced again. So we just replaced it with a GE refrigerator. So anyway, yeah, I don't know why you would do that. They've been shelling civilian areas. There's 2 things possibly at work here. One, they're just absolute terrible people, which I'm not sure is true. Or 2, their equipment is just flat inaccurate. And the way the Army works and so on, they could just say, throw shells that way, and so they did. So the X5105 radio is not available. Sounds just like Okinawa. Nazis, not Germans. The Nazis came out of Germany, but what's interesting is Putin, who seems to have a very long memory, talks about the Nazis in Ukraine. There's a history there. This is many, many years ago, World War II. The Ukrainians did not like the Soviets in their midst. They hated communists. And so when the Germans came in, they gave aid and comfort to the Germans. Now, the Germans did not necessarily reciprocate very well, but there were Ukrainian divisions in the SS. They were willing to fight for Germany because they wanted the USSR out. And when the USSR retook the Ukraine, they pulled the Ukraine's the breadbasket of Eastern Europe. It's like Kansas and all those places like that. It grows lots and lots of wheat. And Stalin took it all and left the Ukrainians to starve. And that was his payback to the Ukrainians for siding with the Germans, whom they sided with because they wanted the USSR out. So there is a history there. And when you talk about, from Putin's point of view, it's not entirely irrational. He's saying that there are Nazis running the Ukraine. Well, it goes back to this idea of rebellion against the Soviet Union. He's got a very long memory. What's happening in the Ukraine has nothing to do with the Nazis. But in Putin's mind, remember, he's a child of the Cold War. Gosh, it's just terrible. Philippines is my kind of weather. Well, I was there. Hot and wet, hot and dry. Wala peso. Wala means no pesos. Yeah. Okay. The Philippines was harsh on my body. I lost a great deal of weight. I got used to it, but I didn't regain the weight until I got back to the U.S. It was down to 145 pounds, 140, 135 at the low point. Sent my mom a picture and she freaked. She thought I was terribly ill. I wasn't. I was doing fine. U.S. Navy SCBs, I think, were designed for 45% RHI. For extensive research found men in pants with short sleeve shirts were most effective at that point. So, yes, RT S 68 degrees Fahrenheit, technically 6 degrees cold. Oh, I see the 74%. With a baby, brand new human baby, if it's 85 degrees in the room, you can leave the baby completely unclothed. And I remember once attending a little party over at a house. It was over 100 degrees here in Montrose. And these people had their brand new baby in this lovely little jumper. And it was 110, and the baby was totally lethargic and so on. And I took the baby from them, completely stripped the baby, and handed them back the baby. It says, not in this heat, you don't put a jumper on him. Diaper, okay, you're going to have trouble with diaper rash, but don't put any clothing on a baby when it's 85 degrees. Okay, Gulf of Tonkin long been documented as never having happened at all. That's true. That's true. I just watched a video on the GQG MC320 today and bought a Geiger counter. Yes. Here it is right here. I did a video on this. This is the GMC 320 Plus. It does work. I think it only does like alpha and beta, but not gamma, or not alpha, or not beta, or not something. But it's a cute little thing. And there is background radiation, of course. But this is it. And it attaches to the computer. And I asked my wife if she had any old green glass servingware, you know, like dishes or bowls or whatever, and she does. Well, the reason it's green is because the uranium is used for the coloring, and they are radioactive. Fiesta ware, which is orange, if you can get a hold of any of that, that's also slightly radioactive. It's fun to show people that Russian woodpecker transmitter Duga is near Chernobyl. Oh, well, I hope not. Yeah. Okay, glad I got a hold of RSPDX when I did. Oh, yeah, they're having everybody's having supply chain issues. Winter Park, Florida. I think I've been there. Instructions. No real man needs the instruction. Okay. This is currently on and I can't turn it off. Tell me how to turn it off. There's the power button right there. And if I touch it, or if I hold it in, it does not turn off. So I'll have to pull out the instruction manual and see how to do it. There's $5 from Bob Darlington, who says 550 rubles for you, Dave. Yes, the ruble has just fallen through the floor. Oh, Ukraine has many radioactive dumps. Incredibly good dirty bomb material. Yeah. Oh, well. GE Appliances was sold out. I'll have to check that. Putin is... yes, he is a sociopath. He's crazy. Notice how far he sits away from everybody else. Good morning, Vietnam. Yes, Warner Robin still has an Air Force base. Retired there, worked B-1s and Joint Stars. I worked on the... Oh, it was the B-2. I worked on the inertial nav system for the B-2. Good evening from AI K4TEP. Have you done a video on the small spectrum analyzer? You're talking about on the 5105? That's really tiny. Probably not alpha. I'll have to read. Alpha doesn't go very far, and it may not even penetrate the case of this thing. If you want to know about elements involved, a gamma spectrometer is quite helpful. Cool. Okay, let's see. I'm going to hide that message. It's got a personal attack in there. Has uranium in it. I had uranium toys back then. Yes. Green glassware. Yes. Carnival glass be radioactive? I don't know. Just try different colors. You hold a Geiger counter up to it and see. Ukraine was an area where many Germans emigrated under Catherine the Great. Yes, the Volga-Deutsch, some of them fell in with Hitler during World War II. Russian payback was hell. My grandfather and grandmother on my mother's side were among the, how do they call it, diaspora of Germans who went in with that farming thing. They were actually invited in because they were good farmers, and they were invited to put farms up there to feed the people. And my grandfather came from what was the Sudetenland. Okay, and my mother came from what is now in Hungary, but then she was in a Hungarian area, but from a German community. So we had these two expat Germans met in San Francisco. My grandfather was the 8th of 18 children, and his dad was the mayor of the little town, Vostitz, Vlazostice now in Czechoslovakia. And he left there he joined the Austrian army, and then went to the United States in 1908 and just never went home. So he's AWOL to this day. Of course, he's long dead. But yes, after World War II, every one of those Germans that had emigrated into Eastern Europe to do the farming were shoved out, unceremoniously dumped over the border into pretty much Western Germany. Some went to Austria and so on, but all the Germans in the Sudetenland and in Czechoslovakia, those who had gone into Romania, Hungary, and so on, were all booted out after World War II. A lot of them died. So it's a question, it's something that's not talked much about. Okay, says I'm picking up gamma rays. Okay, I'll have to look at that. Got a question. I have a Chameleon Incom 2 end-fed with a 5-to-1 matching box. Came with 60 feet of wire. Can longer wire be used with that 5-to-1 transformer? I don't know. Try it. Find out. I have that. I was given one. I reviewed kind of the ensemble package and showed everything that was in it. Data should slide right through GM tube easily. Okay, well, I'll have to look at it. I don't know. Anybody heard anything from the folks at Rig Expert and how they are doing in the Ukraine? That is right. Rig Expert. Made in Ukraine. Right there. Made in Ukraine. Okay. This is a very nice little analyzer. And let's see. Had used scintillation counters to pick up beta. In most cases, okay, take the battery out. Los Alamos scientist. Second that. Sudetendeutsche. Yeah. They were all kicked out. They're all gone. I mean, their lands were seized, all their property. They were just basically ushered to the border and given a kick in the rear, and that was about it. Thanks for your steady wisdom in radio, electronics, and life, says Christopher Goodman, who adds $10 to the channel funds. Thank you. I read about this Russian woodpecker radio signal. It's been around for a long time. The idea of an over-the-horizon radar is very simple. You send a signal around the world, reflected by the ionosphere. It bounces off something big like a ship. Okay, and follows that path back, and then the radar can measure the time and figure out how far away it is. It can do things with the phasing to figure out where it is, and so on and so forth. And the U.S. has used them. The Russians and the Chinese have gotten into the act. Nanospectrum analyzer in Randall. Okay. Yeah, they do work. Oh, they banned German. Oh, they were very angry. But fortunately, instead of doing what President Wilson did and suppress the Germans, and there were a lot of people who wanted to raze, R-A-Z-E, destroy all the factories and everything and push the Germans back into an agricultural economy. But people remembered what happened after World War I, and finally George Marshall took the plan to Truman and Eisenhower to create the so-called Marshall Plan to do very thorough denazification and to rebuild Europe sort of in an American image. And it worked wonderfully. And the European Union is the result of that. And a whole bunch of other people who believed in it and so on. So that did work out very well. Okay, nanospectrum. Yeah, you can hook it to your computer and get a better view of the script. According to the manual, it says press power button a long time to turn on off the radio. I am pressing the power button. Well, I'll keep pressing the power button. Oh, there. Look at that. I think it went off. No, came back on. Okay. I'll just hold it a long time now. Dave, you're the best. As a former programming professor at Purdue, I know great teaching technique and you've got it. Thank you very much. Doesn't hurt that you've got a great soul. Mike in Japan, N1HON. Well, it turns off and then it comes back on, so. I'm waiting. There. You got to let go of the button at the right time. Hey, thank you for looking that up in the instructions. I appreciate that. Question, don't understand the 13.8 volt power supply versus 12 volt battery. What does that mean? It comes from the automobile. The automobile has 12 volt battery in it. Okay, granted a lead acid 12 volt battery when fully charged is 12.6 or 12.7 volts, But to charge that battery, the alternator in the automobile, used to be the generator, had to get up to about 13.8 volts in order to actually put a charge into the battery. Well, all the electronics on the automobile had to be able to withstand the 13.8 volts. And so all that equipment was spec'd at 13.8 volts, including when the ham radio equipment came along. Now, modern cars will go up to 14.4 volts. So you will see in the specifications for the radio, they usually have some specs somewhere. Connector information. Let's go at the beginning. This is the manual for the 7300. And it will tell you 13.8 volts plus or minus 15%. It's in there somewhere. Plus or minus 15%, which will take you up to the 14.4 and take you down to the 12. Okay? So it's that range, 12 to 15 volts, kind of that all of the equipment works on. And since 13.8 was the spec, that things were built to, then that's the way that things got built. That's where 13.8 comes from. And it's called 12 volt because the automobile batteries were called 12 volt. That's what it was. Do you know of any site or YouTube video that has good instructions on setting up DMR with the Anytone HT and Pi-Star zoom spot? I do not. You'd have to, the Anytone HT, of course, you would set up for the lowest power that you could. If you guys could just excuse me for a moment. There. Took care of that. Okay. Sorry about the delay. A bump in there. Okay, great YouTube channel, DJ Jackson. Great YouTube channel of videos about the discovery of radiation. Channel name Kathy Loves Physics. I've been listening to her too. She's very good. My main concern with longer wire and Incon 2 is the change of impedance depending on frequency I'm on, since it's a 5-to-1 matching box, which is going to be a 5-to-1 matching box regardless of the frequency. So, yeah, 5-to-1 isn't that much. If you're end feeding something, you want more like 49 or 50-to-1. My great uncle was a German electric engineer in Hamm and Warsaw with a radio shop at AWA, teaching ciphering to the Polish military. He reverse engineered the Enigma machine. Good man. He worked with those Rajewski and his comrades on that. They reverse engineered that thing and figure out a manual way of solving some of the ciphers based on the simple fact that a letter could never represent itself. That was a flaw in the machine design. A letter could never represent itself. And so basically what they did was they started eliminating the possibilities. Well, A can't be A, B can't be B, C can't be C, and all this kind of stuff. And they actually were able to come up with some solutions for this thing. Okay, John Sambrook has put $10 into the chat revenue. Says, great show. Got around for the WW7 MST Thursday Night Net. 73s from KJ7RDV. And 7 OVR is QRT. Great show. Okay. Dave, is there a formula to determine the length on window line when using it on a dipole? No, it's a transmission line. You use whatever length you need. Dave, check out the bands this weekend, an ARRLDX contest. Very good. Just got a quick question. What is the smallest gauge wire I can use for an end-fed half wave with 100 watts digital and single sideband? I wouldn't go less than 18 gauge. I mean, a higher number than 18 gauge. It is time, isn't it? Dave, I won the February contest and got my Radiodity HT today. Thanks, it's very cool. Well, John, you're certainly welcome. Thanks for being an Augie. Okay, smallest I use for dipoles is 14 gauge. It's a loud clock. Yes, it is a loud clock. It's a real clock. Chinese clock, by the way. Just a quick question. What is this? Oh, I think I just answered that. Ozzy puts $5 into the channel fund. Said, my concern with MCOM is the change of impedance with a longer wire in different frequencies, since the matching box is only 5-to-1. Is it relevant? I don't think it is, but I'd just try it with the wire they provide and see how well that works. Optical Man Jeff, can you explain what an old Q multiplier used with old radios that have a pi network? Yeah, Q multiplier was actually to counteract the resistance that was in the tank circuit, so that the Q would be higher. As the Q is higher, the signal that comes through is higher amplitude and would be louder. Okay, and also it would push out the other signals that you didn't want. I'll have to go into that a little more last week. We are a few minutes over time. But it had nothing to do with the fact that the radio had the pi network. The pi network was designed for the transmitter to work into. Okay, not so much the receiver. Okay, so I'm going to say 73 to everybody. We had a wonderful conversation tonight. We covered several different technical topics, and we're able to explain a number of those. And watch the videos. They're still coming every day. I'm going to put out a video here about some channel changes. One will be the announcement that we'll be doing the giveaway on a calendar month basis. And the other will be that we're going to drop videos on Sundays. The COVID thing is kind of over-ish, and we'll start to move back to normal. I used to only make one video a week, and now I'm making 6 plus a live stream. We might just cut that down to 5 plus a live stream. So thank you all very much for attending, and I will say to you, see you next time, and until then, 73.